Friday, it's 2 o'clock. We've got Navy head football coach Brian Newberry with us. We've got Scott Wyckoff from WBAL, Bill Wagner from the Annapolis Capital, Baltimore Sun Media Group, and Colton Poole from Hero Sports. Scott Wyckoff, you go ahead and lead us off.
Coach, now I know you haven't had a lot of time to do it, but looking back on the spring practices, what was your biggest takeaway that you really are happy about as you get ready to go into this next phase of preparing for the season?
I think, Scott, I'm just really pleased and excited just about the overall body of work, going back to January. Really impressed with the consistency that this team has shown, throughout spring ball. Excited about the growth and development of a lot of our players. I thought we were able to, we talk about stacking days around here and, one brick at a time. And I thought our guys did a great job of that this spring. And I think the consistency piece sticks out to me. And I think we've made a lot of strides in a lot of areas, addressed some of our needs and deficiencies. And I think fundamentally, the fundamentals were a big emphasis for us this spring. And I think we're in as good a place from a fundamental standpoint at this point than we've ever been, probably. So really pleased with that part of it.
I know you said a lot of players had made huge improvements. What made Vic stand out to win the MAC award, making the move from snipe to fullback, where he was struggling at snipe, but now is a real part of this team's future at fullback?
Yeah, I think the move, Scott, moving him back to B-back was really good for him. I think he's more suited for that. His skill set. He's a thick, strong, explosive dude. He's got home run potential at B-back, and just I think what he did kind of speaks to the consistency of the whole group. When he showed up every day, took advantage of the opportunities that he had. He was in a much better place mentally as far as knowing the playbook, understand what his job was, and just did a great job showing up every day and going to work. And it certainly paid off for him.
It was exciting to see Braxton get his chance as the season wound down in East Carolina. How did he perform in this spring camp with the opportunities that he could have in the coming season?
Yeah, I thought he was outstanding, particularly in the front half of spring ball. He had a little shoulder AC sprain that kind of slowed him down a little bit in the back half. Missed a few days, but was really impressed with what he did, prior to that. And he got to practice the last few days. But, you can see the confidence in him growing. Talking about a guy that's got all the tools. He can make all the throws, and you know what kind of athlete he is. Really, really pleased with his progress.
Thanks, Coach.
Thanks, Scott.
We also have Kyle Goon from the Baltimore Banner now joining us as well. Wyatt, you're up.
Coach, who else was in contention for the Admiral Mack Award in addition to Victor? Is there, a handful of guys that were also discussed, and who were they?
Yeah, it was Vic was kind of a clear-cut choice, but there were a lot of guys, that we talked about for the award. I think we've had several guys that had really good springs. Job Grant was a guy that's had a really good spring. He's our kind of separated himself. He's that number one Mike right now. Coleman Colley behind him had a really good spring, I thought. Aaron Rose, a freshman for us at free safety. Giuseppe had a really good spring. Really pleased with how he's come along. We had a lot of guys. Typically this is the time where especially those plebes, have an opportunity. You get into fall camp, everything happens so fast. Those guys end up on the scout team and don't get a ton of opportunities. But I thought we had a lot of guys make the most of those opportunities, and those are just a few names that kind of stood out to me.
Obviously, offensive line was somewhat of a question mark. You have to replace 3 starters, and the other 2 starters, the returning starters, Ben Purvis and Hoke Smith, were really not able to participate much in spring camp. Who were some of the guys that kind of came out of that? I'm guessing that what did Cam Nichols show out a little bit at right guard?
Yeah.
Kind of tell me who maybe you have to get two new tackles. Did Grayson Crawford play well in replace of Purvis, and did Jake Polito show you anything at center?
Yeah, like the silver lining with those with Ben and Hope being out was the amount of reps a lot of those young players got. And I think you mentioned Cam Nichols, who played some center for us this spring and handled it really, really well. He's a guy that will play both those spots for us, kind of a utility guy, amongst those interior guys. You mentioned Grayson Crawford, who I thought had a really good spring as well, made a ton of progress. I was really pleased with those two young offensive tackles, Connor Heater and Sean Crowley. Thought those guys, they just need a ton of reps. They're going to be really good players. And Jake Polito, you mentioned him as well, who got a little banged up about halfway through spring, but had made a lot of progress. Really excited about him. So we've got a lot of good pieces there up front. Really encouraged by the development of those guys. This spring we got a ways to go with that group. We've got a lot of guys that haven't played a lot of snaps for us, but there's a lot of talent there, and I'm pleased with the progress so far. We just need as many reps as we can get. The OTAs in June and fall camps obviously going to be critical, but we certainly have some pieces there. It'd be good to get Ben and Hope back in there healthy as well.
So as things shape up right now, Ben Purvis obviously is a left guard. He's entrenched. But where are you thinking you want to play Hoke Smith? At center or guard? And did any of the performance of Crawford or Cam Nichols, impact your thinking in that regard?
Yeah, Hoke's another guy that has played both center and guard for us, and really kind of depends on how some of those other guys come along and how we end up doing that. But Jalen Acevedo is another guy that had a really good spring, but also got a little banged up, in the process. And so we've got a lot of really good interior bodies, and so we just got to kind of figure that out as we go. But we've got some depth, especially in the guard and center right now, which is good.
And last for me for now, you were a little thin at wide receiver with Kent running track and field, and some other guys missing the spring. Did Hutchinson show you what you thought you would get out of him in terms of, taking a step forward to the point where you can feel like he can be a real impact player?
I do, yeah. I'm really pleased with Luke, and he was nursing a couple of hamstrings, kind of reoccurring theme right now. We had a lot of guys who were a little banged up, but he's got some big play potential and has really developed himself into a nice wide receiver that's going to be a threat for us. There's no doubt about that. But Casey Smith had a really good spring, and really, really impressed and pleased with him and the things that he's done as well. And we got to get some of those other guys to come along. Josh Guerin has showed some flashes, and just got to be more consistent.
Colton Poole, Hero Sports.
Yeah, thanks for the time, Coach. Just wanted to ask, I know you talked about your receivers a little bit there, but wanted to ask about your skill players overall, just how, based on what you've seen this offseason now, what do you think the potential is for this offense with the guys that you got coming back?
Yeah, it's obviously really good to get all those skill players back, because we've got some really good ones. And, what we want to do this spring is obviously get those guys, those established players, better, but develop depth behind those guys. And so I think we were able to do that, this spring. And you look at the Snipes, Chapman didn't go through most of the spring. He had some things taken out of his ankle and was able to practice with us the last couple of days in a limited fashion. But Isaiah Bryant is a really talented player. You got guys like Mike Barrow, Popacana, Charles Robinson, who we transitioned from quarterback to slot. I think who else? TK Hodges, had a really good spring. So there's some really good athletic bodies there at that snipe position. Obviously, feel like we've established some depth, behind Teska at D-back, and so there's a lot of talent in those rooms, and I do think we made some strides in just developing our depth in those areas. But it's great to have those skill players back, especially second year in the system, and so really excited about that piece.
Yeah, specifically, how do you go about developing those guys that have been in the program for a couple years now? How do you get those guys to take that next step?
Yeah, just the reps. Those guys need as many reps as they can get. And we took advantage of that this spring. And there were times, in 11-on-11 situations where you kind of know who Eli Heidenreich is, you know who Alex Tesk is, you know who guys like Chad are. And so to get those other guys as many reps as you possibly can, to throw them in the fire a little bit and let them learn and grow. And I think we did that this spring.
I mean, behind center too. How do you feel about that spot right now too?
Yeah, obviously feel really good about Blake. Um, going through another spring and just having such a great grasp on what we're doing offensively. And transitioning to allow him to make some audibles. He understands what all 11 guys are doing. He can put us in the best possible plays and really pleased with him. And spoke about Braxton earlier, and his growth and development. It's unfortunate that Jackson Gutierrez wasn't able to go through spring because he's certainly shown some promise as well. And I thought Trey Jones did some good things this spring as well. So we certainly got some depth at quarterback, which as we haven't had that in a few years. So excited about that piece.
And lastly, specifically for Blake, what is the next step? What is the thing that you mentioned the audibles, but what is the next step for him going into next season?
Well, I think just continue to make progress and fine tune the little things and the fundamentals and just continue to get better at his craft. But he's tremendous leader. Love his demeanor. I think just continue to get to know the offense as well as he can, and we got to figure out how much can we put on his plate, during the course of a game where he can make some decisions and get us in the right plays, and what kind of things can we choice, for him at the line of scrimmage. Evolving some of the RPO things that we're doing, and so that's another thing that we'll spend a lot more time on this summer and fall camp moving forward. But he's obviously knows the offense really well, and he's extremely intelligent, and we got to be able to take advantage of that.
That's all I got. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Colton.
Kyle Goon.
He's just listening.
Must be. All right, Scott Wyckoff.
Yeah, sorry, Scott. Yeah, I was just listening in.
Okay, no problem. Scott Wyckoff.
Coach, I know a thing that you really want to, and you, Coach Cronic, has talked about it, that can even take this offense up another notch, are the tight ends. How did they develop over the course of spring?
Yeah, really well. Cody didn't go through the majority of spring, either recovering from his ankle surgery. I was able to practice the last few days in a limited role and just he's had a great off season. He looks like $1 million. I mean, he's going to be a really good player there for us at tight end. Jake Norris put together a solid spring as well, and then we got a couple of plebes. Theo Elwell is showing some promise. Will Miles had a really good spring as well. So we've got some bodies there. We're really starting to develop that room, and excited about the tight end position.
Oftentimes you say the focus during the spring is on some of the younger players to develop, but an older player that I know this was an important spring for was Kenny McShand. How important was it for him to have a healthy spring, and how exciting is it to have him healthy going into this season?
Really exciting. I mean, Kenny's a really good player, and he's had a good spring. Him and Jackson Campbell have had a nice competition there at striker. They're pushing each other, they're making each other better, and you really feel like you've got two guys right there that you can go win games with. And both those guys have had really, really good springs. Really excited about both of them.
And simultaneously, as the spring practices were going on, the guys also had a great role model in Rayon in what he's been doing. How important is that when you bring players in and they see someone like Rayon getting such attention for doing the things that he's been asked of at the academy now on a professional level potentially?
Yeah, I think it's great. I think it's great to see that there's a potential path for these guys that want to play in the NFL. And I think the whole story behind Ray and the fact that he had some opportunities to leave and stayed, and why he stayed, and how he stayed the course and how he developed while he was here. And I think it's a great story and a great inspiration to our guys.
Thanks, Coach.
Thanks, Scott.
Flags.
As it stands now, who would you put out there with at defensive end in place of Justin Reed? Mudame?
Yeah, Moodway's had a really good spring. He certainly made a ton of strides. Ben Franklin is a plebe that's exceptionally talented, has done some really good things for us. So excited about that group. The first time in a long time we've had this kind of depth, with defensive line, especially on the interior piece of the defensive line. So feel really good about where we're at up front right now.
And you mentioned Job Grant. Is that at Will, did you say?
Oh, Mike.
Okay, he's at
Yeah,
Mike.
yeah,
So
yeah.
who looks
He's
like
played
they're
both.
running number one at Will? Mark Anthony Parker?
Yeah, Mark Anthony Parker and Marcus Blazard. He's played a lot of snaps for us. I feel like you got 4 really good ones and some good depth behind those guys. Really impressed with those guys. Cole McCauley had made a ton of progress this spring. So excited about him. I think, moving Joe back to Mike, I think he feels more comfortable there. That's where he was last spring. We kind of moved him to Will, but he's functioned really, really well there. Just his overall understanding of what's going on with the defense, what's going on around him. All season really has paid off for him, but he's an exceptional talent. He got a chance to be a really special player, I think.
But isn't Blazard more of a Mike as well?
Blazer's playing Will. He's another guy that can do both. This spring he's primarily playing Will and has excelled there.
So basically, it's Grant and Cauley at Mike and Mark Anthony Parker and Blazard at Will.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Okay, what about at safeties? I mean, who you got to replace Ray Lane and then Beatty Williams, and
Yeah.
we talked to to Coach Lewis and I. There's a bunch of guys. Sessi you mentioned,
Yeah.
Matt Saliga, Adam Walker,
Mm-hmm.
Josh Switzer. I mean, how things shaking out at the 2 safety positions?
Yeah. So I mentioned Aaron Rose earlier. Excited about him. You got Seth English, who's coming off of an ACL, who was in a limited role during spring football. Obviously, would like to have him full go, but I think he's got a chance to be a really good player. Big, long safety that can run. Done some good things for us. And you look at I thought Sessi had an outstanding spring. Behind him, you got Cush, you got Switch, Saliga, who you mentioned, Carson. So we got a lot of really capable bodies and a lot of guys that have made a ton of progress. So big shoes to fill at safety, but I think we're going to be able to do that well. And I think we're going to have some depth there too. Some good quality depth.
Does it look like there's a capable punter with Riley departing?
Yeah, I think Jacob Carlson is the clear number 1 guy right now. I thought he had a really good spring. And, Jacob's a lot like Riley in regards to his athleticism, maybe even a better athlete than Riley. But he's punted the ball well this spring for sure.
All right, I'll pass it on.
Colton.
Yeah, just one more for me. I know Rayon Lane was just mentioned. Just wanted, with the draft coming up, just wanted to ask what kind of person, what kind of athlete is he from your perspective, Coach?
Yeah, phenomenal athlete. I mean, he's a special athlete. We don't see many of those type of athletes come through here. I mean, he's obviously a phenomenal kid. Just grown tremendously, in his time here in a lot of different ways, but an exceptional talent. I think a team's going to get a steal with him. I do. But smart, talented, and he's got tremendous upside. Colton, once he's just doing football professionally, and that's all he's focused on, I think his upside is huge.
Awesome, thank you.
Open it up for anyone. Anyone else have any questions? Wags, you got anything else?
Well, yeah, I mean, on that regard, there's a new policy that has emerged. There's some, definitive language now with regard to service academy athletes and their ability to pursue pro sports. Can you comment on that and what that means for the Navy football program?
Yeah, I mean, and Ray Lane gets drafted, he's going to be able to go play. and that's good. That's all we want is the possibility of a direct path. Where they don't have to postpone being able to play, and they can defer their service or serve while they're playing. So we know that there's a clear-cut path for that now, which is exciting for all the academies. And, our guys deserve that opportunity.
Anything else, Wags? Coach, is there any position going into a position or two going into the spring that was maybe keeping you up at night that you feel much better coming out of spring about?
That's a good question. I think maybe not keeping me up at night, Strauss, but certainly and you always have concerns going into spring, and some things you think maybe there's some deficiencies when you look at your overall roster. I think O-line, a lot of question marks. I think we got a lot of that answered this spring, and not all of it answered, but a good amount of it. And then the shoes that we had to fill in the back end. Not just at safety, but at corner as well. And I think we're in a good place with that right now as well. So, like I said, we just need a ton of reps. A lot of young guys that are going to be really good players with a ton of potential. Just that haven't necessarily played in games or played meaningful snaps for us, and so they just they need all the work they can get, and we got a lot of time between now and our first kickoff, and I feel good about the way those groups are attacking what we're doing and the development, the growth of those groups so far. So I'm sleeping a little better at night, now than I was maybe before spring ball. But there's always concerns and there's always things, guys to replace and things that need to be answered, and we certainly made progress in that direction.
I think corner and snipe are the two positions maybe we didn't touch on yet. Snipe, you got a lot of guys back. Talk a little bit about both those positions.
Yeah, we talked about snipe. We talked about some of the young guys that were able to get a ton of reps because of the limited reps that Chat got and Eli got and Isaiah. And so I mentioned Pope Akana. I mentioned Isaiah Bryant. I mentioned Mike Barrow. Mentioned the change with Charles Robinson from quarterback. All those guys have shown promise. And then when you go to corner, I think one of the names I didn't mention earlier for most improved, and he did some good things for us as a true freshman, was Justin Ross. I mean, you're talking about a 6'2", 6'3", 190-pound, long, fast, athletic corner. I mean, he's got a chance to be, a special player. I thought Bryce Allen had a good spring. Ira was back and forth dealing with some injuries. He was probably our best cover corner last year. Obviously, having him back is important. Andrew Duhart, be a senior for us, and he's been a great player for us. We've actually experimented with him. He's going to be a utility knife for us a little bit. He can play safety, he can play nickel, he can play corner. So there's, we've got some good players coming back, and we've got some good young players.
Great. You want to have anything else for Coach? All right. Thanks a lot, Coach. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Coach.